Security! Call the police! That little thief is going straight to jail tonight!
Sir, please don't do this. I just wanted to...
Marcus Whitmore's voice exploded like a bomb across the packed living room of his $12 million penthouse overlooking Central Park in Manhattan. His face twisted in rage, veins bulging from his neck as he grabbed the plastic grocery bag from 26-year-old Elena Reyes's trembling hands and hurled it across the marble floor, sending leftover prime rib, roasted vegetables, and mashed potatoes splattering against the white walls like a crime scene. 50 guests in Gucci heels and Tom Ford tuxedos gasped in unison, champagne flutes frozen midair, iPhone cameras immediately flipping to record mode as Elena stood there in her faded blue cleaning uniform, her long dark hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, mascara-streaked tears pouring down her bronze cheeks, her entire body shaking so violently she could barely stand. Marcus, a 48-year-old real estate mogul with salt and pepper hair, slicked back with too much gel, and a Patek Philippe watch worth more than most people's houses, circled her like a predator, his Hermes loafers clicking against the floor with each menacing step. His wife Victoria, blonde, Botoxed, dripping in diamonds that could fund a small country, stood behind him with her arms crossed, her lip curled in absolute disgust, shaking her head slowly as if Elena were something she'd just scraped off the bottom of her Louboutins. "You ungrateful little parasite," Victoria shrieked, her voice high-pitched and venomous, pointing a perfectly manicured finger with blood-red nails directly in Elena's face. "We took pity on you, gave you a job when nobody else would hire some nobody from the Bronx, paid you more than you're worth, and you steal from us on Christmas Eve? On Christmas Eve?" The crowd erupted in whispers, heads nodding in agreement. Someone in the back yelling, "Call the police," while another guest muttered something about these people never being trustworthy. Elena tried to speak, her lips moving but no sound coming out, her chest heaving as panic flooded her system. She wanted to scream that she had permission, that the head chef Carlos had told her to take the leftovers that would be thrown in the trash anyway, that she desperately needed that food because her 14-year-old brother Tommy was home alone in their freezing studio apartment in the South Bronx, starving and sick with leukemia, too weak to even get out of bed. But the words wouldn't come, and all she could do was stand there as Marcus pulled out his phone, dialed 911, and told the operator in a loud, theatrical voice that he had a criminal trespasser in his home who had stolen from him, making sure every single person in that room heard him destroy her. If your blood isn't boiling right now, then you need to check your pulse, because what you're about to witness is one of the most shocking, heart-wrenching, and ultimately vindicating stories of justice I've ever told on this channel. This isn't just about a bag of leftovers. This is about power, greed, cruelty, and the moment when the entire world turned against a man who thought he was untouchable. So do me a favor right now. Smash that subscribe button for Journeys of Redemption. Hit that like button so hard it breaks. Share this video with everyone you know who needs to see proof that karma is real. And drop a comment telling me what city and state you're watching from, because I want to know how far Elena's story reaches. Because what happened after the police arrived, after the video went viral, after the secrets came pouring out, it didn't just destroy Marcus Whitmore's reputation, it obliterated his entire empire, exposed lies that went back years, and revealed a truth so devastating that even his own family turned their backs on him forever. The NYPD officers arrived at Marcus Whitmore's penthouse within 12 minutes, their badges gleaming under the crystal chandelier light as they stepped into the marble foyer, boots tracking in snow from the blizzard raging outside. Eleanor stood in the corner like a cornered animal, her back pressed against the cold wall, her arms wrapped around herself as if trying to disappear, while Marcus paced back and forth like a prosecutor in a courtroom, his voice booming with righteous indignation. "Officers, I want this woman arrested immediately for theft," he declared. gesturing dramatically toward Elena as if she was some hardened criminal instead of a terrified young woman in a cleaning uniform. She was caught red-handed stealing food from my kitchen, food that was meant for my family and guests, and I will not tolerate this kind of betrayal in my home. The two officers, one a stocky Italian guy from Queens named Officer Caruso, the other a tall black woman from Brooklyn named Officer Williams, exchanged a quick glance, their expressions unreadable as they pulled out their notepads and began asking questions. "Ma'am, is this true?" Officer Williams asked Elena gently, her voice cutting through the chaos like a lifeline, her eyes softening as she took in Elena's tear-streaked face and trembling hands. Elena opened her mouth, her voice barely a whisper, cracking with emotion as she tried to explain. I didn't steal anything, I swear on my life. The chef told me I could take the leftovers, he always does. They throw away so much food every night, and I just needed something to bring home to my little brother. He's sick, he has cancer. We don't have money for food and medicine both. Her words tumbled out in a desperate rush, her accent thick with the Bronx streets she grew up on, her hands clasped together as if in prayer. But before she could finish, Victoria cut her off with a shrill, mocking laugh that echoed through the room like nails on a chalkboard. "Oh, please, spare us the sob story," Victoria sneered, rolling her eyes dramatically. "Every criminal has an excuse, every thief has a sad tale. Next, you'll tell us you're a single mother working 3 jobs, right?" The guests erupted in laughter, some clapping, others raising their glasses in agreement, treating Elena's pain like entertainment at a Broadway show. Marcus smirked, crossing his arms over his chest, his Rolex catching the light as he leaned against the granite kitchen island with smug satisfaction. "You see, officers, this is exactly the kind of manipulation these people use," he said, his tone dripping with condescension, waving his hand dismissively as if Eleanor were nothing more than an annoying insect. "They come into our homes, we give them opportunities, and they repay us with lies and theft." Officer Caruso frowned, his jaw tightening as he looked from Marcus to Elena, something in his gut telling him this didn't add up. "Sir, do you have security footage of the alleged theft?" he asked, his voice professional but firm. Marcus hesitated for just a fraction of a second, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face, before he recovered and nodded confidently. "Of course I do. I have cameras everywhere in this penthouse, but I don't need to waste time reviewing footage when I caught her with my own eyes." Officer Williams stepped closer to Elena, lowering her voice so only she could hear. "Sweetheart, do you have any proof that you had permission to take that food?" she asked, her tone kind but urgent, knowing that without evidence, this young woman was about to be arrested on Christmas Eve. Elena's mind raced, panic flooding her system as she tried to remember. Did Carlos write anything down? Did anyone else see him give her permission? Her hands fumbled for her phone in her uniform pocket, her fingers shaking so badly she almost dropped it, scrolling frantically through her text messages, her WhatsApp chats, anything that could save her. And then she found it. A text message from Carlos Mendoza, the head chef, sent just 40 minutes earlier. "Elena, take whatever's left in the fridge. We're tossing it all tomorrow anyway. Merry Christmas, mija." She thrust the phone toward Officer Williams with a gasp of relief, tears streaming down her face. "Here, look. Carlos told me I could take it. He always does. Please, you have to believe me." Officer Williams took the phone, read the message carefully, then showed it to Officer Caruso, who nodded slowly, his expression shifting from skepticism to something closer to anger. "Mr. Whitmore," Officer Caruso said, his voice taking on a harder edge as he turned to face the billionaire. "It appears this young lady has a text message from your head chef giving her explicit permission to take the leftover food. That means there's no theft here, no crime committed." The room went silent, the laughter dying instantly, champagne glasses lowering, all eyes turning to Marcus, whose face flushed a deep crimson, his jaw clenching so hard you could see the muscles twitching. Victoria's mouth fell open in shock, her perfectly painted lips forming a little O of disbelief, her eyes darting between the officers and her husband as if waiting for him to fix this, to make it go away. But Marcus wasn't backing down. His pride, his ego, his need to be right in front of all these people wouldn't allow it. "I don't care what some text message says," he exploded, his voice rising to a near shout, spittle flying from his lips. "That food belonged to me. It was in my refrigerator, in my home, and she had no right to take it without asking me directly." Officer Williams crossed her arms, her patience clearly wearing thin. "Sir, with all due respect, if your employee had permission from your head chef, who I assume is authorized to make decisions about kitchen operations, then she did nothing wrong," she said firmly, her Brooklyn accent coming through strong now, her tone making it clear she wasn't impressed by Marcus's wealth or status. "In fact, what you've done here tonight, publicly humiliating this young woman, falsely accusing her of theft, calling the police on her without cause, that could be considered harassment, defamation, and wrongful termination if you fired her." The words hung in the air like a bomb, and you could see the realization slowly dawning on Marcus's face, the color draining from his cheeks as he understood that he'd just made a catastrophic mistake in front of 50 witnesses with their phones out recording every second. Victoria grabbed his arm, whispering urgently in his ear, but he shook her off, his pride refusing to let him admit he was wrong. "Get out," he said to Elena, his voice low and venomous, pointing toward the door. "Get out of my house right now and don't ever come back." Elena didn't need to be told twice. She grabbed her coat from the hook by the service entrance, her hands still shaking, her face still wet with tears, and she ran. She ran through the marble hallway, past the sneering faces and judgmental stares, past the officers who looked at her with pity, past the doorman who wouldn't meet her eyes, and out into the freezing December night where snow was falling so thick you could barely see 2 feet in front of you. The cold hit her like a slap, the wind cutting through her thin coat, her breath coming out in ragged clouds as she stumbled down Fifth Avenue, her mind spinning, her heart breaking, wondering how she was going to face Tommy, how she was going to explain that she'd lost her job, that they had no money, that Christmas was ruined. She walked 15 blocks in the snow, her feet numb in her worn-out sneakers, before she finally reached the subway station at 59th Street, descending into the warm, urine-scented underground where a street musician was playing Silent Night on a battered guitar. Elena collapsed onto a bench, buried her face in her hands, and sobbed, deep, gut-wrenching sobs that shook her entire body, the kind of crying that comes from a place of absolute despair. But what Elena didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know as she sat there alone in that subway station, was that one of Marcus Whitmore's guests, a 23-year-old social media influencer named Jasmine Chen, who had over 2 million followers on TikTok, had recorded the entire confrontation from start to finish. Jasmine had watched the whole thing unfold with growing horror, her influencer instincts telling her this was wrong, deeply wrong, and as she stood in the corner of that penthouse sipping her champagne, she made a decision that would change everything. She pulled out her phone, opened her editing app, and began cutting together the footage, Marcus screaming at Elena, Victoria mocking her, the guests laughing, the food splattered on the wall, Elena's desperate explanation about her sick brother, the text message from the chef, the officer's intervention, and finally Marcus's cold dismissal. She added captions, emotional music, and a caption that read, "Billionaire humiliates housekeeper on Christmas Eve for taking leftovers he was going to throw away. This is disgusting." At 11:47 p.m. on Christmas Eve, Jasmine hit post, and within seconds the video began to spread like wildfire across the internet. By midnight, the video had 10,000 views. By 1 a.m., it had hit 100,000. By 3 a.m., it had crossed 1 million, And the comment section was exploding with rage. People from New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Houston, Atlanta, Seattle, Miami, every corner of America and beyond, all united in their fury at what they'd just witnessed. "This man is a monster," one comment read. "She was taking trash, and he treated her like a criminal," another said. "I hope he loses everything," a third declared. News outlets started picking it up. First the local New York stations, then CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, even international media like BBC and Al Jazeera. By sunrise on Christmas morning, Marcus Whitmore's name was trending #1 on Twitter, his face plastered across every news website. His penthouse address leaked online, and hundreds of protesters were already gathering outside his building in the snow, holding signs that read, "Justice for Eleanor" and "Eat the Rich." Marcus woke up that morning to find his phone exploding with notifications, his email inbox flooded with death threats, and his doorman calling to tell him there was a mob outside demanding his head. And that was just the beginning. Because what nobody knew yet, what was still buried deep in the shadows waiting to explode into the light, was that Marcus Whitmore's cruelty toward Elena wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of a pattern, a system of abuse and exploitation that stretched back years, involving dozens of employees, millions of dollars in wage theft, and secrets so dark that when they finally came out, they would destroy not just Marcus's reputation, but his entire family, his business empire, and everything he'd spent his life building. The truth was coming, and it was coming fast, and there was nothing Marcus could do to stop it. Elena finally made it back to her studio apartment in the South Bronx at 2:30 in the morning, her clothes soaked through from the snow, her fingers so numb she could barely turn the key in the lock, her face swollen from crying for hours on the subway ride home. The apartment was freezing. The heat had been shut off 3 days ago because she couldn't pay the bill, and in the dim light from the street lamp outside, she could see Tommy lying on their shared pull-out couch, wrapped in every blanket they owned, his thin 14-year-old body shivering despite the layers. His face was pale, almost gray, his lips tinged with blue, dark circles under his eyes, making him look like a ghost, and when he heard the door open, he lifted his head weakly, his voice barely a whisper. "Clara, did you bring food?" The hope in his voice, the innocent trust that his big sister would take care of him like she always did, shattered what was left of Elena's heart into a million pieces. She dropped to her knees beside the couch, pulling him into her arms, feeling how light he was, how fragile, like he might break if she held him too tight, and she lied through her tears. "I'm sorry, baby, I'm so sorry. They didn't have any leftovers tonight, but I promise I'll get us something tomorrow, okay? I promise." Tommy nodded against her shoulder, too weak to argue, too sick to question why his sister was crying so hard, and within minutes he drifted back into a fitful sleep, his breathing shallow and ragged. Eleanor sat there on the floor, staring at the empty refrigerator across the room. Nothing inside except a half-empty bottle of ketchup and a carton of expired milk. And she felt the weight of her failure crushing down on her like a physical force. She'd been working 3 jobs for the past 2 years, ever since their mother Maria had died from a heart attack at 41, leaving Elena to raise Tommy alone, with no other family, no support system, nothing but her own determination and love. She cleaned houses during the day, worked as a waitress at a diner in Queens 3 nights a week, and picked up weekend shifts at a laundromat in Harlem, and still it wasn't enough. Not enough for rent, utilities, food, and the astronomical medical bills from Tommy's leukemia treatments at Mount Sinai Hospital. The chemo alone cost $15,000 per session, and even with Medicaid covering most of it, the co-pays and medications were bleeding her dry, forcing her to make impossible choices every single day. What nobody at that Christmas party knew, what Marcus and Victoria and all those wealthy guests in their designer clothes could never understand, was that Eleanor hadn't eaten a full meal in 4 days because she'd given all their food to Tommy. She'd been surviving on free coffee at the diner, stealing packets of crackers when her manager wasn't looking, drinking water to fill her stomach when the hunger got too bad. She'd sold her mother's wedding ring 2 months ago for $300 to pay for Tommy's antibiotics, pawned her own laptop for $150 to cover part of the electric bill, and she'd been walking to work instead of taking the subway to save the $2.75 fare each way. The leftover food from Marcus's penthouse wasn't just a convenience, it was survival. It was the difference between Tommy eating or going to bed hungry. And Marcus had treated her like a criminal for trying to feed her dying brother. Elena pulled out her phone with shaking hands, scrolling through her bank account, $12.37. That was it. That was all the money she had in the world, and rent was due in 6 days. Tommy's next chemo appointment was in 9 days, and she'd just lost her highest-paying job. She thought about calling her friend Destiny, who worked at the hospital, but it was 3 in the morning and she couldn't burden anyone else with her problems. She thought about going to a church, begging for help, but pride, stupid, stubborn pride, kept her frozen on that floor. Instead, she opened her text messages and read the last conversation she'd had with her mother before she died. Messages she'd saved for 2 years, reading them whenever she felt like giving up. "Mija, you are stronger than you know. Promise me you'll take care of Tommy. Promise me you'll never give up, no matter how hard it gets. I love you forever." Elena pressed the phone to her chest, fresh tears streaming down her face, and she whispered into the darkness, "I'm trying, Mama. I'm trying so hard, but I don't know how much longer I can do this." The apartment was silent except for Tommy's labored breathing and the distant sound of sirens wailing through the Bronx streets. And Elena felt more alone than she'd ever felt in her entire life. But while Elena sat in that freezing apartment believing her world had ended, something extraordinary was happening across the internet, something that would change everything. Jasmine Chen's video had exploded beyond anyone's wildest expectations, racking up 20 million views by dawn, shared by celebrities, politicians, activists, and ordinary people who were absolutely enraged by what they'd witnessed. The comments section had become a war zone of righteous fury. "This is everything wrong with America in one video. That man deserves to rot. Someone find this girl and help her. I'm literally crying watching this." Major news networks were running the story on their morning shows. Good Morning America, Today's Show, CBS This Morning. All of them showing the footage of Marcus screaming at Elena. All of them condemning his behavior. All of them asking the same question. Who is this young woman, and how can we help her? A reporter from the New York Times named David Chen had already tracked down Carlos Mendoza, the chef, who confirmed on record that he'd given Elena permission to take the leftovers and that Marcus had a history of mistreating staff. A labor rights attorney named Patricia Gomez had reached out offering free legal representation. And most incredibly, a GoFundMe campaign started by a complete stranger in California named Sarah Mitchell had already raised $300,000 in less than 12 hours. But Elena didn't know any of this yet. She had no idea that her name was trending worldwide, that millions of people were searching for her, that help was coming from every direction. She'd turned off her phone to save battery, and she was too exhausted, too defeated to check social media or the news. So when the sun finally rose on Christmas morning, casting weak grey light through the dirty window of her apartment, Eleanor made a decision that broke her heart, but felt like the only option left. She would take Tommy to the emergency room at Lincoln Hospital, tell them she couldn't afford his treatment anymore, and beg them to find a way to help him, even if it meant giving up custody, even if it meant admitting she'd failed as a guardian. She couldn't watch him die slowly in this freezing apartment, couldn't let her pride kill the only family she had left. She gently shook Tommy awake, helped him into his coat. Too thin for December, 2 sizes too small because he'd grown and she couldn't afford a new one. And together they walked out into the snowy Bronx morning, Elena supporting most of his weight as they made their way slowly toward the hospital 6 blocks away. They'd made it 3 blocks when Elena's phone, still in her pocket turned off, suddenly started buzzing with such intensity it felt like it was vibrating apart. Confused, she pulled it out and turned it on, and immediately her screen exploded with notifications. Hundreds of missed calls, thousands of text messages, her social media accounts flooded with tags and mentions and messages from people she'd never met. "What the hell?" she whispered, her frozen fingers fumbling to open her messages. And the first one she saw was from Destiny, her friend at the hospital, sent at 6 a.m. "Elena, call me right now. You're all over the news. People are raising money for you. Oh my God, call me." Elena stopped dead in the middle of the sidewalk, Tommy leaning against her, confused and tired, as she opened her Twitter app with shaking hands. And there it was. Her face, her story, her humiliation from last night, plastered across every news outlet in America. The video had been viewed over 30 million times. The hashtag Justice for Elena was trending #1 worldwide. And the GoFundMe link that someone had created for her now showed a number that made her knees buckle, $1.2 million. "Oh my God," Elena breathed, her hand flying to her mouth, tears instantly flooding her eyes as she read comment after comment from strangers offering support, love, prayers, and money. Oh my God, this can't be real." But Tommy looked up at her, his pale face confused, his voice weak. "What's happening? What's wrong?" Elena dropped to her knees right there on the snowy sidewalk, pulling her little brother into the tightest hug she'd ever given him, sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. But this time, they weren't tears of despair. They were tears of shock, relief, and overwhelming gratitude. "We're going to be okay, Tommy," she whispered into his hair, her voice breaking with emotion. "I don't know how, I don't understand it, but we're going to be okay." People walking past them on the street started recognizing her from the video, stopping to stare, pulling out their phones, and within seconds a small crowd had gathered. But instead of judgment or mockery, they offered kindness. A woman pressed a $20 bill into Elena's hand. A man offered to call them an Uber. A teenager asked if she could hug her. Elena's phone rang, and she answered it with trembling hands. It was Patricia Gomez, the labor attorney, speaking rapid fire. "Elena, my name is Patricia. I'm a lawyer. I want to represent you for free. We're going to sue Marcus Whitmore for wrongful termination, defamation, and emotional distress, and I promise you we're going to make him pay for what he did to you." Before Elena could even respond, another call came through. This time from a producer at Good Morning America, asking if she'd be willing to come on the show to tell her story. Then another call from the New York Times. Then another from a philanthropist in Texas who wanted to pay for all of Tommy's medical treatments. The calls kept coming, one after another, and Elena sat there on that snowy Bronx sidewalk, completely overwhelmed, unable to process the fact that in less than 12 hours, her entire life had been turned upside down. The world had seen her humiliation, her pain, her desperation, and instead of turning away, they'd reached out to lift her up. But while Eleanor was experiencing this miracle, Marcus Whitmore was experiencing his own personal hell, and it was only just beginning. Because the internet doesn't just expose cruelty, it investigates it, and thousands of amateur detectives were now digging through every aspect of Marcus's life, looking for more evidence of wrongdoing. And what they were about to uncover would make the Christmas Eve incident look like nothing more than the tip of a very dark, very deep iceberg. By December 27th, just 3 days after the Christmas Eve incident, Marcus Whitmore's entire world was collapsing faster than a house of cards in a hurricane, and he was powerless to stop it. His company, Whitmore Real Estate Holdings, a billion-dollar empire built on luxury apartment developments across Manhattan, Brooklyn, and Queens, saw its stock price plummet 38% in a single trading day as investors fled in panic, spooked by the PR nightmare and the protests that had now spread to every single one of his properties. His board of directors held an emergency meeting and voted unanimously to suspend him as CEO pending a full investigation into workplace practices. And 3 major business partners, including a Saudi investment fund and a Chinese development firm, pulled out of deals worth over $200 million combined. Marcus sat in his penthouse office, the same penthouse where he'd humiliated Elena, staring at his computer screen in disbelief as his net worth evaporated in real time, his hands shaking so badly he could barely hold his whiskey glass. Victoria had already moved out, taking their 2 kids to her parents' estate in the Hamptons, and her divorce attorney had sent papers that morning demanding half of everything, plus $20 million in immediate cash. But the financial devastation was nothing compared to what was coming next, because a former employee named Jennifer Blackwood, a 34-year-old accountant who'd worked for Whitmore Real Estate for 6 years before being fired last spring, had been watching the Elena video with growing rage and a sense of moral obligation. Jennifer had signed a non-disclosure agreement when she left the company, an NDA that came with a $50,000 severance payment in exchange for her silence about what she'd witnessed during her time there. But watching Elena's humiliation, seeing Marcus's cruelty broadcast to the world, Jennifer made a decision that would cost her that money, but save her conscience. She contacted Patricia Gomez, Elena's attorney, and offered to break her NDA and testify about the systemic abuse, wage theft, and illegal labor practices she'd documented during her years at the company. Patricia immediately arranged a meeting at her law office in Midtown Manhattan, and what Jennifer revealed in that conference room, backed up by emails, spreadsheets, and recorded phone conversations she'd secretly kept, was absolutely explosive. Marcus had been systematically underpaying his cleaning staff, maintenance workers, and security guards for over 8 years, shaving hours off their time cards, denying overtime pay, and threatening to report undocumented workers to ICE if they complained. Jennifer pulled out a thick folder of printed documents, her hands steady despite the magnitude of what she was about to expose, and she laid out the evidence piece by piece, like a prosecutor building a murder case. This spreadsheet shows that Marcus personally approved cutting janitorial staff hours by 20%, while requiring them to maintain the same workload, she explained, pointing to highlighted cells with Marcus's initials next to them. This email chain shows him instructing building managers to fire anyone who asked about overtime pay. And this recording, she pressed play on her phone, and Marcus's voice filled the room crystal clear, saying, "I don't care if they're working 70 hours a week, we're only paying them for 40, and if they don't like it, there are 10 more desperate people waiting to take their jobs." Patricia's eyes went wide, her legal mind immediately recognizing this as a slam-dunk case, and she asked the question that would blow this story into the stratosphere. "Jennifer, how many employees are we talking about here? How many people did Marcus exploit?" Jennifer's answer was devastating. "Based on my calculations, over the past 8 years, Marcus has stolen approximately $4.7 million in wages from roughly 320 employees across all his properties." The news broke on December 28th when Patricia held a press conference outside the New York State Supreme Court building, with Jennifer standing beside her and Elena, now dressed in new clothes bought with GoFundMe money, her hair professionally styled, looking stronger and more confident, standing on her other side. News cameras from every major outlet crowded the steps, reporters shouting questions, and Patricia's voice boomed through the microphone with the force of righteous fury. Today, we are filing a class action lawsuit against Marcus Whitmore and Whitmore Real Estate Holdings on behalf of over 300 current and former employees who were systematically robbed of their wages, their dignity, and their rights. She held up the evidence, waving it in the air like a weapon. We have emails, recordings, financial documents, and eyewitness testimony proving that Marcus Whitmore built his fortune on the backs of vulnerable workers, many of them immigrants, many of them living paycheck to paycheck, all of them too afraid to speak up until now. The crowd of supporters behind them, many of them former Whitmore employees who'd come forward after seeing Elena's story, erupted in cheers, holding signs that read, "Wage theft is real theft, and billionaires are not above the law." Within hours, the story had exploded across every news platform in America, and this time it wasn't just about a mean billionaire yelling at a housekeeper. This was about systemic exploitation, corporate crime, and the dark underbelly of American capitalism. The New York Attorney General's office announced they were opening a criminal investigation into Whitmore Real Estate. The Department of Labor launched their own probe into labor law violations. The IRS started looking into potential tax fraud related to the unreported wages. And most damaging of all, former employees started coming out of the woodwork with their own horror stories. A security guard named Miguel Ortiz, who'd worked 80-hour weeks for years without overtime and was fired when he asked for fair pay. A housekeeper named Aisha Johnson, who was forced to clean luxury penthouses with toxic chemicals without proper safety equipment and developed chronic respiratory problems. A maintenance worker named Robert Kim, who fell off a ladder because Marcus refused to pay for proper safety gear and was then denied workers' compensation. Each story was worse than the last, each testimony adding another nail to Marcus's coffin, and the public rage reached a fever pitch that hadn't been seen since the Occupy Wall Street movement. Marcus tried to fight back, hiring a crisis PR firm for $200,000 and releasing a statement claiming he was the victim of a coordinated smear campaign by disgruntled former employees and opportunistic lawyers seeking a payday. He went on Fox News for a softball interview where he painted himself as a self-made success story being torn down by jealous haters, saying with a straight face, "I've created jobs for hundreds of people. I've built affordable housing in underserved communities, and this is how I'm repaid, with lies and attacks." But the interview backfired spectacularly when the host, even one sympathetic to wealthy businessmen, asked him point blank, "Mr. Whitmore, we have recordings of you admitting to wage theft. How do you explain that?" Marcus stammered, his face turning red, sweat beading on his forehead under the studio lights, and he gave an answer so tone-deaf it became an instant meme. "Those recordings are taken out of context, and besides, if those workers didn't like their jobs, they were free to leave at any time." The internet exploded with mockery. Free to leave and starve, free to leave and lose their housing, free to leave and watch their kids go hungry. And Marcus's approval rating, according to a Snap poll, dropped to 7%, lower than Congress, lower than the DMV, lower than root canals. But the absolute death blow came on January 2nd when an investigative journalist named Rachel Morrison from ProPublica published a bombshell expose titled "The Whitmore Files: How a Manhattan Billionaire Built His Empire on Stolen Wages and Broken Lives." The article was 20,000 words long, meticulously researched, and it didn't just focus on the wage theft, it exposed everything. It revealed that Marcus had been bribing building inspectors to overlook safety violations, that he'd used shell companies to hide assets and evade taxes, that he'd sexually harassed multiple female employees over the years and paid them hush money through NDAs, and most shockingly, that he'd been involved in a scheme to illegally evict rent-controlled tenants from buildings he wanted to convert into luxury condos using intimidation tactics that included shutting off heat and water in the middle of winter. The article included interviews with over 50 sources, photographs of documents, and even surveillance footage showing Marcus's employees carrying out the illegal evictions. It was journalistic excellence at its finest, and it won Rachel a Pulitzer Prize nomination 6 months later. But more importantly, it destroyed any remaining shred of Marcus's credibility and turned him from a controversial figure into a universally reviled criminal. The lawsuits started piling up faster than Marcus's lawyers could count them. The class action from Patricia Gomez, individual suits from former employees, a massive lawsuit from the New York Attorney General seeking $50 million in penalties, and even a federal RICO case suggesting Marcus's company operated like an organized crime syndicate. His assets were frozen by court order, his bank accounts seized, his properties placed under receivership, and his passport confiscated to prevent him from fleeing the country. The mansion in the Hamptons, the penthouse in Manhattan, the vacation home in Aspen, the yacht docked in Miami, all of it was being liquidated to pay settlements and legal fees. Marcus's so-called friends, the people who'd laughed and clinked glasses at his Christmas party while Elena was humiliated, now refused to return his calls, deleted photos with him from their social media, and publicly denounced him to protect their own reputations. His children, a 19-year-old son at Yale and a 16-year-old daughter at a private boarding school in Connecticut, both changed their last names and released statements saying they were ashamed and horrified by their father's actions. Even his own mother, an 82-year-old woman living in a nursing home in New Jersey, gave an interview to a local paper saying she didn't raise him to be cruel and that she prayed he'd find redemption. By mid-January, Marcus Whitmore was a broken man, living alone in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in New Jersey that he was renting under a fake name, his face so recognizable that he couldn't go outside without being harassed, spit on, or threatened. He'd lost everything, his money, his family, his reputation, his freedom, and he spent his days drinking cheap vodka and scrolling through the endless stream of articles, videos, and social media posts documenting his downfall. And in his darkest moments, when the alcohol wasn't enough to numb the pain, he would pull up that security footage from Christmas Eve, the footage he'd refused to watch when the police asked him to, and he would force himself to see the truth. There was Elena, carefully wrapping the leftover food that the kitchen staff had told her would be thrown away, her movements gentle and respectful, pausing to whisper what looked like a prayer of gratitude before heading toward the service exit. There was no sneaking, no theft, no malice, just a desperate young woman trying to feed her dying brother. And there was Marcus, bursting into the kitchen seconds later, not even bothering to check the facts before unleashing his rage, his ego, his cruelty on someone who'd done nothing wrong. The weight of that realization, that he'd destroyed an innocent woman's dignity, that his own arrogance had triggered his complete annihilation, that he could have simply asked a question instead of assuming the worst, crushed Marcus in a way that no lawsuit or financial loss ever could. He'd spent his entire life believing that wealth equaled worth, that power meant he was untouchable, that people like Elena existed to serve people like him. And now, sitting in that shabby apartment with nothing left but his shame, Marcus finally understood the truth. He'd never been powerful, he'd just been cruel, and cruelty always comes back to destroy the person who wields it. 6 months after that catastrophic Christmas Eve, Elena Reyes stood on the stage of the Apollo Theater in Harlem, her hands gripping the microphone with quiet confidence, her voice steady and clear as she addressed a packed audience of over 1,500 people who'd come to hear her story at a fundraising event for workers' rights organizations across New York City. She wore a simple navy blue dress, her hair pulled back in a neat bun, and beside her sat Tommy, now 15 years old, his face fuller and healthier, his eyes bright with life instead of dimmed by sickness, his leukemia in complete remission thanks to the cutting-edge treatment paid for by the GoFundMe donations and a generous grant from the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. Elena looked out at the sea of faces, some crying, some smiling, all of them hanging on her every word, and she spoke with the wisdom of someone who'd walked through hell and come out stronger on the other side. 6 months ago, I thought my life was over, she said, her voice cracking slightly with emotion. I thought I'd lost everything, my job, my dignity, my hope, and I couldn't see any way forward. But what I learned in the darkest moment of my life is that sometimes you have to be broken down completely before you can be built back up into who you were always meant to be. The audience erupted in applause, and Elena smiled through her tears, waiting for the noise to die down before continuing. The money that strangers donated didn't just save my brother's life. It gave us a second chance at living instead of just surviving, she explained, her hand reaching out to squeeze Tommy's shoulder as he sat beside her, beaming with pride. We moved into a real apartment in a safe neighborhood with heat and hot water. Tommy got the medical care he desperately needed, and for the first time in years, I didn't have to choose between feeding him and buying his medication. But Elena made it clear that she hadn't kept all that money for herself. She'd used a significant portion to establish the Maria Reyes Foundation, named after her late mother, which provided emergency financial assistance to low-income families dealing with medical crises, helped workers fight wage theft through free legal services, and offered scholarships to young people from the Bronx who wanted to go to college. In just 6 months, the foundation had already helped over 200 families, recovered more than $800,000 in stolen wages, and sent 12 kids to college with full scholarships. Elena had transformed her pain into purpose, her humiliation into hope, and her suffering into service. But Elena wasn't the only one whose life had changed. The class action lawsuit against Marcus Whitmore had been settled in April for $42 million, with every single one of the 320 affected workers receiving compensation for their stolen wages, plus damages for emotional distress. Miguel Ortiz, the security guard who'd worked 80-hour weeks without overtime, received enough money to finally open the auto repair shop he'd dreamed about for 20 years. And he hired exclusively from his old neighborhood in Washington Heights, giving opportunities to young men who reminded him of himself. Aisha Johnson, the housekeeper who developed respiratory problems from toxic cleaning chemicals, used her settlement to pay off her medical debt and enroll in nursing school at Borough of Manhattan Community College, determined to spend the rest of her career helping people instead of scrubbing floors for people who treated her like she was invisible. Robert Kim, the maintenance worker who'd been denied workers' compensation after his injury, took his family on their first real vacation in 15 years, a trip to Disney World in Orlando where his kids got to be kids and he got to be the hero dad he'd always wanted to be. Each person's story was a testament to the power of justice, the importance of standing up against exploitation, and the reality that when people come together to fight for what's right, they can win. Marcus Whitmore, on the other hand, had lost absolutely everything, and by June he was facing criminal charges that could send him to prison for up to 15 years. The Manhattan District Attorney had built an ironclad case against him for wage theft, tax evasion, bribery, and conspiracy to commit fraud. And Marcus's legal team, now down to a single overworked public defender because he could no longer afford private attorneys, had advised him to take a plea deal. Marcus refused at first, his pride still clinging to the delusion that he could somehow fight his way out of this. But after spending 3 weeks in Rikers Island jail awaiting trial, where he was recognized immediately and became a target for every inmate who'd ever been screwed over by a rich boss, he finally broke. He accepted the plea deal. 12 years in prison, full restitution of all stolen wages, forfeiture of all remaining assets, and a lifetime ban from serving as an officer or director of any corporation. On the day of his sentencing, Marcus stood before Judge Maria Torres in a cheap suit that hung off his now gaunt frame. His hair grayer and thinner, his eyes hollow and defeated. And when the judge asked if he had anything to say before sentencing, he finally told the truth. "Your Honor, I have no excuses for what I did," Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper, his hands trembling as he gripped the podium. "I spent my entire life believing that my success, my wealth, my power made me better than other people, and I treated anyone I considered beneath me with cruelty and contempt." He paused, swallowing hard, tears beginning to stream down his face. Real tears, not the crocodile tears he'd tried to use in earlier court appearances. Elena Reyes did nothing wrong that night, absolutely nothing, and I destroyed her dignity in front of 50 people because I was too arrogant to ask a simple question, too proud to admit I might be wrong, too cruel to see her as a human being instead of just hired help. His voice broke completely, and he had to stop for a moment to compose himself, the courtroom silent except for the sound of his ragged breathing. "I don't expect forgiveness, I don't deserve it, but I want everyone to know that Elena was right and I was wrong. And if I could go back and change that night, I would give everything I ever had just to treat her with the basic respect and kindness she deserved." Judge Torres stared at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable, before delivering a sentence that was both just and merciful. 12 years, with the possibility of parole after 8 if he demonstrated genuine rehabilitation. Marcus was led away in handcuffs, and as the courtroom emptied, Elena, who'd been sitting in the back row, watching the entire proceeding, felt something unexpected wash over her. Not satisfaction, not vindication, but a deep, profound sense of peace. She'd spent months angry, hurt, and traumatized by what Marcus had done to her. But watching him stand there, broken and humbled, finally taking responsibility for his actions, she realized that holding on to that anger would only poison the beautiful new life she was building. So 2 weeks later, Elena did something that shocked everyone who knew her story. She wrote Marcus a letter. It wasn't long, just a single page written in her neat handwriting on simple notebook paper, but every word carried the weight of genuine grace. "Mr. Whitmore," it began, "I watched you in court, and I heard your apology, and I believe you meant it. What you did to me that night was cruel and wrong, and it caused me and my brother tremendous pain, but I've learned that carrying hatred in my heart only hurts me, not you. So I'm writing to tell you that I forgive you, not because you've earned it, but because my faith teaches me that forgiveness is how we free ourselves from the chains of bitterness." The letter continued, "I hope that during your time in prison, you'll use this opportunity to truly change, to understand why what you did was wrong, and to become the kind of person who lifts others up instead of tearing them down. My mother used to tell me that every person has the capacity for both great cruelty and great kindness, and we get to choose which one we feed every single day. You fed cruelty for a long time, Mr. Whitmore, but it's not too late to start feeding kindness instead. I'm praying for you, and I'm praying that when you get out, you'll use whatever time you have left to make amends and help people instead of hurting them. You took something from me that night, but you also gave me something without meaning to. You gave me a platform, a voice, and an opportunity to help hundreds of people who were suffering just like I was. So in a strange way, I'm grateful, because your cruelty led to my purpose. I wish you peace, and I hope you find redemption." She signed it simply, Elena Reyes. When Marcus received that letter in his cell at Sing Sing Correctional Facility 3 weeks later, he read it over and over until the paper was worn soft from his tears, and he kept it tucked under his pillow every night for the next 8 years. Marcus did change in prison, slowly, painfully, but genuinely. He attended every rehabilitation program available, earned his GED in social work, volunteered to teach financial literacy classes to other inmates preparing for release, and spent countless hours in therapy confronting the toxic beliefs about wealth and worth that had driven his cruelty. He read books about labor rights, workers' movements, and economic justice, and he began to understand the systemic nature of the exploitation he'd participated in. When he was finally released on parole after serving 8 years, Marcus emerged as a completely different man, humbled, educated, and committed to spending the rest of his life making amends. He moved into a halfway house in the Bronx, got a job as a janitor at a community center, the same kind of job he'd once looked down on, and he volunteered every weekend at the Maria Reyes Foundation, doing whatever Elena needed, whether it was stuffing envelopes, cleaning offices, or speaking to at-risk youth about the consequences of greed and arrogance. He never asked for recognition, never sought publicity, and he lived simply on his modest income, donating every extra dollar to workers' rights organizations. 3 years after his release, on a cold December morning, Marcus showed up at the Foundation's office in the South Bronx, carrying a box of donuts and coffee, his weekly ritual, and he found Elena there early, working on grant applications. They'd developed a cautious, respectful working relationship over the years, built on his consistent demonstration of change and her extraordinary capacity for grace. And when she looked up and smiled at him, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in over a decade, genuine peace. "Morning, Marcus," Elena said warmly, accepting the coffee gratefully. "How are you doing?" Marcus set down the donuts and sat across from her, his weathered hands folded on the table, and he spoke with quiet sincerity. "I'm doing okay, Elena. I'm grateful to be here, grateful for another day to try to do some good in the world." They worked side by side for the next few hours, and when they took a break, Marcus finally asked the question that had been weighing on him for years. "Elena, why did you forgive me? After everything I did, after how I treated you, why did you give me a second chance?" Elena looked at him thoughtfully, her eyes reflecting the wisdom she'd gained through suffering and survival, and she answered with the kind of truth that changes lives. "Because, Marcus, I learned that hurt people, and healed people, heal people," she said simply, her voice gentle but firm. "You were hurt in ways I'll probably never understand. Maybe by your parents, maybe by a world that taught you that money equals worth, maybe by your own fears and insecurities, and you dealt with that hurt by hurting others. But I also learned that if I held on to my anger and refused to forgive you, I'd become just as trapped as you were, just in a different kind of prison." She paused, taking a sip of her coffee, choosing her words carefully. "Forgiveness doesn't mean what you did was okay, and it doesn't erase the consequences you faced, but it means I'm not going to let what you did define the rest of my life. I'm going to let it refine me instead, make me stronger, kinder, more compassionate, more determined to fight for people who can't fight for themselves. And honestly, Marcus, watching you actually change, watching you humble yourself and do the work to become better, that's been one of the most powerful things I've ever witnessed. It gives me hope that people really can change if they're willing to do the hard work." Marcus's eyes filled with tears, and he nodded slowly, unable to speak for a moment, overwhelmed by the grace of this young woman who had every right to hate him, but chose love instead. And in that moment, in that small office in the Bronx, two people who'd once been on opposite sides of a brutal divide found something unexpected: redemption, healing, and proof that even the worst moments can lead to the most beautiful transformations if we're brave enough to choose forgiveness over bitterness and purpose over revenge. This story isn't just about one billionaire's fall from grace or one young woman's incredible rise from humiliation to triumph. It's about something much deeper, something that every single one of us needs to understand if we're going to survive in this world without losing our humanity. It's about the fact that how we treat people when we have power over them reveals who we truly are at our core, and that cruelty always comes back to destroy the person who wields it, while kindness and grace have the power to transform even the darkest situations into something beautiful. Marcus Whitmore spent decades building an empire on the backs of vulnerable people, treating them like they were disposable, like their pain didn't matter, and in one single night of arrogance, he lost everything, not because of bad luck or a conspiracy, but because the truth has a way of exposing itself no matter how much money or power you have. Elena Reyes, on the other hand, had every reason to become bitter, angry, and vengeful after what she endured. But instead, she chose forgiveness, purpose, and service. And that choice didn't just heal her own heart, it created a ripple effect that changed hundreds of lives and proved that real strength isn't about domination, it's about dignity. And here's what I want you to take away from this story. We all have moments in our lives where we get to choose between being a Marcus or being an Elena, between tearing someone down or lifting them up, between feeding our ego or feeding our compassion. Maybe you're a boss who has the power to make your employees' lives easier or harder. Choose kindness. Maybe you're someone who's been hurt, betrayed, or humiliated, and you're carrying that anger like a weight. Choose forgiveness, not for them, but for yourself. Maybe you're struggling right now, feeling invisible, feeling like the world doesn't care about your pain. Hold on, because your story isn't over yet, and sometimes the darkest nights lead to the most incredible dawns. So if this story moved you, if it made you feel something real, then do me a favor right now. Subscribe to Journeys of Redemption, because we're bringing you stories like this every single week. Hit that like button to help this message reach more people who need to hear it. Share this video with someone who's going through a hard time and needs hope. And tell me in the comments what city and state you're watching from, because I want to know how far Elena's story has traveled across this country and beyond. But don't click away just yet, because there's another video appearing on your screen right now that's going to blow your mind. A story about a homeless veteran who was mocked and spit on by a restaurant owner, only for that owner to discover the veteran's true identity in the most shocking way imaginable. And trust me, you do not want to miss what happens next. Thank you so much for being here with me until the very end, for caring about stories that matter, for believing that justice and redemption are still possible in this crazy world. Until the next video, remember, your worth isn't determined by your bank account, your job title, or what other people think of you. It's determined by how you treat others when nobody's watching, and how you rise after life knocks you down. I'll see you in the next one, and may your journey always lead you toward redemption.